Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about automation in the legal sector. AI has gained significant momentum in service professions, especially in the legal sector, and it has attracted lots of venture capital investment and it has transformed traditional workflows. In 2023, 73% of legal professionals have said they planned on integrating AI into their legal work. There are lawyers that have actually commented that these tools are becoming increasingly significant in their daily lives. As these solutions are able to handle large amounts of data and analyze many of these complicated legal tasks. So, venture capitalists are also heavily invested in AI legal tech startups. Last year alone, 2024, they saw the highest gains. Here we saw 58 deals in legal tech with a total capital investment of $477 million. The appeal for VCs lies in the fact that 44% of their legal work could actually be automated by these emerging AI tools. If you haven't heard, startups like Harvey raised $100 million in their Series C round, and it's valued at $1.5 billion today. Hi, everyone. My name is Hessie Jones, and welcome to Tech Uncensored. The implications for legal professions are significant. AI is reshaping traditional workflows. Even 70% of professionals say that they're seeing the benefits from many of these AI-powered technologies when it comes to research, when it comes to drafting, when it comes to document summarization. However, there actually remains some trepidation within the services industry. 25% of professional respondents see artificial intelligence as a threat. So, Ben Su is a legal tech entrepreneur. He is the founder of Capita, which is the world's first AI lawyer. He argues that the true potential for AI legal services goes beyond efficiency gains, and he envisions that AI will eliminate workflows entirely and create this proactive, always on system that can solve legal problems before they actually happen. He actually contends that the legal industry is stuck in these outdated systems, and the real opportunity lies in actually using AI to fundamentally reimagine what legal services could be. So, while his vision seems a little bit more radical than what the market offers today, the trend towards AI adoption in this sector is fairly clear. Law firms, legal departments not moving towards AI can risk falling behind as AI begins to permeate not only this industry, but others as well. So I'm pleased to welcome Ben Su to talk about his progressive views on AI and how it can revolutionize the legal profession. How does he envision his company in providing greater access and efficiency for businesses? And what will this mean for not only the legal profession, but the future of other professional services? So, welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Hessie, for having me on.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you and I have talked about it, and wow, some of your views are enlightening. So let's get started. Tell me a little bit about your backstory and why you as a lawyer have decided to venture into artificial intelligence and disrupt this profession.
Yeah, absolutely. So my entrepreneurial journey actually started during undergrad. I was making some money from my side hustle as a tutor. At one point, I was actually generating more cash, even than what I knew what to do with, because after I paid my rent in cash, after I paid my food in cash, I had more cash. Uh, so that kind of got me into entrepreneurship, how fun it was. I get to, improve user experience with my tutor clients that were high school kids or adults that are trying to get a second career. And it was really fun. Afterwards, I ventured into biotech. My undergrad was actually in biochemistry. I co-founded a biotech startup. Long story short, we had a mini exit selling an IP to a pharma company. So that got me the entire view of how a company works from inception stage to dealing with customers, clients, and all the way at the end to selling its entire asset. And everybody gets to split whatever that was left. So I realized at a young age that any meaningful commercial transactions or activities were actually they were actually built on legal system, because contracts protect future expectations, right? So if you were to raise capital, if you were to sell an IP, everything had to be based on the legal system and contracts. And that got me interested in law. So I went into law school. I studied law, my JD at University of Ottawa, with the intention of not becoming a lawyer for the rest of my life, but becoming an entrepreneur. And I wanted to know all the rules there is to know in the legal system that would be relevant to operating a technology company. So I took IP law classes. I took corporate law, securities law, tax law. I actually got a business and tax law scholarship from University of Ottawa as well. And what I realized in law school was that legal contracts are essentially if A then B logics. And even legislations, you can say they are just if A then B logics. But it's much more complex than that because they have maybe thousands of if A then B logics. And in the context of Income Tax Act, you probably have no less than 500,000 if A then B logics. So I said to myself, hey, it seems to me that these if A then B logics can be automated with just traditional software, right? Because it's you can argue in a way it's mathematical reasoning or logical reasoning, right? And fast forward to 2022, I was practicing law at a boutique tech firm here in Toronto. I rekindled my relationship with my law school classmate who took exactly the same classes as me, who also had the intention of not becoming a lawyer but an entrepreneur. Uh, we co-founded Capita. The whole idea is we know the existing legal system is extremely outdated. People who want to access legal services or legal knowledge cannot afford them, right? And people who are providing legal services, on the other hand, they're complaining that they're being underpaid, right? So if you talk to most of the junior lawyers, the associates working at law firms, or even the articling students who are struggling in Canada to find an articling position that is paid at a livable wage, they're complaining a lot too. So I think there's a huge gap in terms of the way legal services are purchased and the way legal services are delivered. I think that is an opportunity for technology to step in. And therefore, I decided to venture into tech from my law career.
Okay, so tell me about the success that you've had so far in terms of traction and capital raising.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first product we launched after founding Capita was a capital formation product. So we essentially automated lawyers away from startup fundraising process. And well, I would say, before we built that product, we had the fortune of being supported by some of the world's best investors, including Hyperplane VC, Fresh Founders, and multiple exit founders. That gave us enough dry powder to build that capital formation automation product. So within 10 weeks of launching that product, at one point, we were processing $71,000 per day in terms of startup fundraising, just in the greater Toronto area alone. We were seeing more deal flows than any angel networks or incubators in Canada. And that quickly got us on the radar of multiple investment organizations, including VC and angel networks. Long story short, Q2 2024, we were preempted into another round of capital raising led by uh, Drive Capital, and also some of our former investors from previous round doubled down on us in the new round. And this gave us, I would say, a boost to become even more ambitious. So instead of just automating the capital raising part of legal ops in the startup life, we said to ourselves, why don't we automate away the entire legal stack for a pre-seed and seed stage company?
Okay.
So this is Capita Current. Um, the 2.0 version of Kappa is we're building the AI lawyer for startups.
Okay. So let's talk about the current legal profession, because obviously what you're building is probably the future, and it's current but it's the future, and we can argue that many legal services will not get to where you're at probably in the next year. So from a task perspective, we see that AI can impact the level legal profession today significantly. They talk about contract analysis. It can reduce your error rate by 90%. Um, Paralegals, um, they can automate it up to 40% of their tasks, as well as legal assistants, junior lawyers, and it could process documents 60 times faster than
Mm-hmm.
manual processing. But you argue that incremental AI improvements are a dead end. So tell me a little bit about this and why you believe that optimizing existing workflows is inefficient for true innovation in your field.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have done quite a bit of customer discovery interviews. So we took a first principle based approach in understanding what people liked or disliked about legal services instead of just trying to replicate what the law firms or the lawyers are doing with AI. And I think like the law firms and lawyers, what they're missing out on is the opportunity to talk to their customers in a YC, in a traditional YC styled customer discovery interview, right? For example, what we found that was actually quite surprising to me, because I was the person delivering legal services to my clients when I was practicing law. But what I found was that customers don't want a better lawyer. They have no interest in getting access to the $1,000 per hour Bay Street law firm partner. What they want is actually a thought partner that will help them along the journey of building their startup, coming up with innovations in their business model or structuring their equity so that their vision would be aligned for the founding team, right? And also, I think where the legal industry is getting things wrong is that if you Google legal tech startups, almost 99% of them are about making document processing or review faster. But those efficiency gains have never been transferred to the end user, the clients. Legal fees are increasing just like everything else in the economy, right? Uh, I think an average partner rate at a tier one law firm is probably approaching $1,500 per hour, or even 2,000, right? So the way we're thinking about reinventing legal services is about listening to the customers on what they want. They don't want, for example, a shareholder agreement. I don't need an instant generation of a shareholder agreement for my co-founders, but rather I want to talk to someone that I can call on the phone to discuss, hey, what would be a good way to incentivize everyone to work hard on this startup for a long time? So that's the way we're differentiating ourselves from the law firms and lawyers.
It's funny because legal advice is so important, and yet people who are paying for it are very conscious of every hour, every minute that that's needed for that lawyer to give them exactly what they want. So as much as they're valued, it's also a big risk to small companies or companies who just can't afford legal services. They know that they need them as a partner, but do you believe that currently the value is not equal to the price that they're paying?
Yeah, absolutely. I 1,000% agree with the premise of your question. I even had founders telling me that I hate talking to my lawyer because in my head, I have this clock telling me that for every sentence I'm saying to my lawyer, I'm getting billed for it. Even I don't they even tell me I hate even emailing my lawyer because for that email I'm getting billed at least for 50 minutes for it. So that actually discourages communication between the client and the lawyer. And why would that need to? Well, that would need to poor outcomes, right? So, um, anyways, kind of like back to the point, uh, is that we feel legal services, uh, the way that it has been delivered and is currently delivering, uh, people are not getting the value out of it.
Mhm.
Uh, like for example, like we actually had to fix a number of mistakes that the law firms made for our users before we onboarded them. Part of the reason I think is this. I think when you're a startup, you walk into the big Bay Street law firm's office. You may get the first half an hour of consultation from a partner, but the people that end up executing on the legal services that would be delivered to you would be the first year and second year associates, right? So they're still learning their ways around the legal world. That's number one. Number two is that, and these associates, they're extremely overworked and underpaid, right? So you can just imagine the type of energy uh, that would be going on in a workplace environment. Number three is that uh, these lawyers, they've never sat in the driver's seat of building a company, launching a product, raising capital. So it's extremely difficult for them to have the empathy in the challenges that the client's facing. I think outside of technology, that's a unique advantage that Capita has is that we have two lawyers and one machine learning engineers, and we all had our previous career in building and selling companies. So we bring quite a bit of empathy from the founder perspective to building the product.
Mhm. That's interesting. I also see, like, your company actually just creating an alternative path, an alternative business model for legal services. And as you say, if there is a disparity within existing legal services where the juniors are the ones that are managing the clients for the most part, but they're not getting the value, um, and they're overworked, then there is an opportunity for automation to reduce that workload, increase value. But as you say, another part of it is passing on the savings. So talk to
Mhm.
me about how you see a new type of business model that's going to come out of legal services in the future. At least what you're doing right now.
Right. Um, so the traditional or the typical classical legal tech startup is They sell tools to lawyers, and there's a lot of great companies. Actually, uh, the founding advisor for Capita was a founder that created the first AI generative AI company in the legal tech space. So we actually have a very in-depth understanding of how services from the tech companies are delivered to lawyers and how lawyers are delivering those services to clients. And I think like one of the most memorable lines that I heard from our founding advisor was that clients don't care about what tool you're using. At the end of the day, they care about the outcome and how much you're charging for that outcome, right? So if you were to think about that a little deeper, um, the way we feel that the outcome could be improved is not to generate faster documents or cheaper documents, but rather is to have an always on proactive thought partner that the founder can speak to, just to brainstorm some ideas, right? For example, in the fintech space, we recently chatted with this group of founders that are building an online marketplace for used electronics, and it's a very clever business model. And they actually use one of the big Bay Street law firms as their legal counsel. But to my surprise, that nobody from that big Bay Street law firm identified that there's a money service business license issue with the business model, because um, by having an always on thought partner in the journey of a founder building their company, building their business model, building their product, it could raise quite a bit of questions earlier on before it becomes too late to
Mhm.
change the direction of the ship, right? So that's how we're imagining services to be delivered. It's not like it's not about documents, reactive. You ask me for this SaaS agreement, I'll give it back to you tomorrow. It's more about, hey, the most optimal way for you to generate revenue for your technology should be A, B, C, and D.
So what does that do to the current system? Or like from a professional consulting perspective, it is based on retainer or hourly rate. How does that change?
Well, I think how it's changing first and foremost in the entrepreneurs world, pricing uncertainty is probably one of the biggest fear factor for clients to use someone's consulting service or legal advisory service. And because of that, it's that pricing uncertainty brings anxiety that will be even more amplified in the early stage startup world, right? So what ended up happening is a lot of questions that should be asked in the beginning were not asked, and that resulted into, say, catastrophic outcomes later on. So the way I like to think about how it's changing the industry, I'm biased towards the users, not the service providers, because at the end of the day, I've been taught that your user's perspective should occupy 99% of the bandwidth of your thought process. And that is what I'm thinking. Is like I imagine that if Capita didn't have the two lawyers on the team, just like say three software engineers with no legal background, how difficult things could have been
Mhm.
along our journey.
It's interesting. I want to talk to you more about the technical side of artificial intelligence, because as you develop this further within your business, um, you talk about the fact that AI isn't about making lawyers faster. It's about making legal problems disappear. And you said that
Hmm.
before anyone has to think about them. But as you know, the technology is still evolving. We're still in this predictive AI state that's more about autocomplete than it is about really truly understanding the way humans think and the way humans process information. So it lacks a genuine comprehension about what's happening. How do you how do you square that with your uh, proactive vision of problem solving? What do you think needs to happen for AI to get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually relevant to one of the LinkedIn posts I made following the release of DeepSeek and also the market crash reaction to DeepSeek. And I want to quote Alex Karp from Palantir. LLMs are commodities. Uh, if you use ChatGPT or even DeepSeek or Claude to do some of the highly specialized or deep expertise type of work, uh, you can guarantee a negative outcome, especially in legal. The number of ChatGPT mistakes that we had to fix for our users, it would be surprising to you. Like I actually have examples of founders closing down their startup because of the agreement that they use for ChatGPT for their founder share split resulted in a very catastrophic outcome that they had to close down the startup. So
So you're I just want to clarify
yeah,
your clients are actually going to ChatGPT and prompting them to give them either legal advice or what legal templates for agreements, etc.
correct. So before we onboarded them, they were already using the generic LLMs to solve their legal ops problems, right? And they generated shareholder agreements using ChatGPT. And the biggest problem with those ChatGPT generated legal agreements is that it doesn't have the specific context of the user. So I'll give you an example. In a venture backable startup, it's common for founders in their shareholder agreements to include this founder reverse vesting clause, right? Just in case if one of the founders had to leave and go work for Google for $500,000 a year, that it's not fair for that founder to take away 50% of the shares of the company, right? Because it would be
Mm-hmm.
50% of a debt weight on the cap table for a pre-seed company. And that's going to be extremely demotivating to the founder who's remaining on building the company and hustling hard. Right. So that's kind of like the example without going into the details of that case. Uh, that's an example I've seen how ChatGPT messed up a startup's journey. So kind of back to your point, I think the opportunity here is using the commoditized LLMs as startups. Um, there's a huge opportunity for the so-called GPT wrappers, right? And the idea is applying deep expertise of the profession. Uh, you don't even need to fine tune the model, just purely based on prompt engineering, based on the understanding of the industry and the requirements of the user. I think there's a huge potential of value to be created in terms of automating professional services.
Okay.
And
Do you
I, no,
okay, yeah, talk to me about that a little bit because there you have to go beyond the data that's provided by some of these generative models or by uploading, let's say, your own data in order for it to train or what?
so we actually don't train anything at all. We use existing commercially available LLMs as comprehension tools and communication tools, right? So we want to for example, in order for our system to understand the context of a user's startup, we would need to ask a series of questions. So that actually mimics the intake process at a law firm, right? And the beauty about what we're building is that we pick the lowest hanging fruit in the legal industry. We pick this market segment that is highly commoditized or highly standardized, right? You, some lawyers will even tell you the templates that you would get from Cooley or Osler, they probably look identical for a pre-seed startup company, right? So we saw this as the lowest hanging fruit for a small startup like Capita to demonstrate that AI can automate quite a bit of the workflow for the founders in terms of their legal ops. So we actually don't use any like customer data or pre-existing data to train anything at all, but rather we do very, I would say, we do heavy lifting on the prompt engineering side of things, right? So it could almost be, it could almost make an analogy saying that the LLM, you can think of the LLM that we're using as a uh, PhD level reasoning
Mhm.
person. Now we take that person, we try to teach that person this is how corporate law works, and we set very strict boundaries on what the output should be based on the input, right? And uh, I would say the biggest difference between us and and a legal LM foundational model is that uh, we are extremely focused on the narrow practice sector known as emerging technology practice. It sounds complicated, but
Mhm.
it really is not.
Okay. So what you're basically saying is that because you don't have to rely on a lot of these huge data sets, the prompts that you actually create are very focused on the specific needs and potential like issues that your target market faces, right? And through that process, you're able to get the data that you need in order to provide some kind of prescriptive outcome for them.
Right. And I think this is unique to the market segment that we're attacking. Um, I'll give you an example. For a single piece of agreement, just say the shareholder agreement, we could have 40 pages of prompts instructing the AI on what to do, right? Uh, and so I would say I don't see the way we're building this product right now to be transferable in building, say, an M&A automation tool. It's not going to work. But in our specific sector, the emerging technology practice, um, I think it's the right tool for the right application.
So speak to me a little bit about the sector that you're focused on, your clients.
Mhm.
What are they saying in terms of outcomes and value? And also the price that you're paying because this your business model is totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think first and foremost, our users are appreciating the fact that we are building a tool not only to provide reactive legal services. For example, hey, I need to launch a product, give me a TOS or a master service agreement so I can go collect some money and make sure my liabilities are protected in a generic way. But rather, we use our tool to come up with strategies in terms of what is the best way to execute this transaction, right? So they appreciated the thought partner nature of our tool. It's always on 24/7. And at the end, we do have human lawyers in the loop to sign off on documents, right? But as I mentioned earlier, in the sector, in this emerging technology sector, everything is quite commoditized. So which makes it relatively easier to scale. And in terms of cost, I would say this: uh, I previously talked to a founder who raised 3 million USD for his he called it a seed round, and the legal bill that he received was $150,000. But I I was quite surprised about that because, I mean, from a percentage perspective, yes, $150,000 of legal bill on a $3 million investment is not that much, right? Uh, but I know that the company was new, so they had no historical transactions or liabilities that you needed to do a comprehensive, 2 week legal due diligence on, right? Uh, so I think for us, we could go 30x, 40x, 50x, or even like at one point 100x more affordable for that founder, right? So but again, like kind of just like bring things in perspective. That's an outlier because not every day you will see a company raising a $3 million seed round, but
Mhm.
more so you have the recent grads from University of Waterloo who want to start an AI company
Right,
or they
right.
want to start a B2B marketplace. These people, they do not have the resources to pay $500 an hour to a junior associate here in Kitchener Waterloo.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
I would also argue that for those that are raising a seed round, they will still not have the resources to pay that legal bill. And in fact, they wait on the outcome of the raise in order to use some of that to pay for the legal fees that they incurred to get uh, that seed round. So it's it does take a toll, and so that
Mhm.
segues me into the next question about how lucrative this industry really is. There are people going to law school because they know at some point they're going to make the big bucks. I just did a bit of research and it said that the average lawyer salary in Canada is about 145,000 per year, and they're making about $75 per hour. So, speak to me about how a service like yours benefits the legal profession, and if you say it's disrupting the business model, what implication does that have from the your perspective about mitigating any job replacement risks, but really improving the business overall?
Yeah, absolutely. I think automation is never a zero sum game with existing professions. I mean, you and I, we previously discussed how automation in agriculture uh, did not make farmers starve, but actually fed the society with the level of abundance that we've never experienced before as a human species. And I think it's the same thing in the AI revolution as well. I actually want to go deeper in terms of dissecting how lawyers are paid. So you actually referenced the average income, but I'm assuming the medium income will probably be different. Why? Because you have Bay Street law firm partners that are making millions each year. But my classmates, they are working 80 to 100 hours a week. Yeah, they may be generating $150,000 of salary each year. But if you were to actually plug in the number of hours they work as lawyers in the denominator, it's actually not that high. Like I actually say to new uh, undergrad students that want to go into law, I say, hey, on a per hourly basis, the realistic expectation for you is that you're not going to be a top earner in the society. You'd probably be better off working as an engineer for a software company, right? And so I just wanted to kind of like clarify that.
Mhm.
And also, I think that this is something that people, lawyers and law firms need to realize. Um, yeah, like they're too focused on the high margin generating transactions. For example, say M&A. Everybody loves M&A work. Why? Because you can collect hundreds, if not millions, of dollars of revenue from those type of work. But there are smaller law firms that are thinking, hey, I want to invest my resources into the startup sector because I want to be first in line when that startup decides to raise a Series A. That's when I can, uh, charge that fat margin legal bill. So I think the incentives are extremely misaligned currently. Why? Because as a law firm that the startups are a negative margin business, but you want to, get those founders on your client list so that you can charge them more money later on when they raise a Series A. And just imagine how that misaligned incentive would translate into user experience, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, that's just like kind of like my rant. But back to your point, um, the way I think about this is that the total addressable market for legal services, for corporate legal services, would be a lot bigger if the cost goes lower. In fact, I think there would be more entrepreneurs in the world if uh, access to legal information, access to legal knowledge and services become more easy or become more, I'd say, affordable, right? Uh, and just think about what Shopify did to make entrepreneurship easier. We
Mhm.
think an automated legal services that would be affordable and more effective than the traditional human legal services. We feel it could greatly boost entrepreneurship in the society.
So, like, I wanna touch on that a little bit because you're gonna have a lot of critics, and I'm sure you've spoken
Mhm.
to a lot of lawyers, legal firms who argue that, the nuanced nature of legal work makes it more resistant to complete automation. What From your conversations with them, what was your feeling about why they were resistant and why they didn't think the legal profession could be really, uh, automated in the way that, you're seeing it?
Yeah, I actually have got into heated discussions in public with lawyers. You know, I definitely sympathize their perspective. I think it's never a good thing to hear that your job could be automated in a certain stage of the societal development, right? Think about the taxi drivers didn't feel good when Uber came around, or the textile workers, or you're seeing it right now with the in the United States, uh, the workers at the ports. They're resisting adoption of automation,
Right.
right? So this is what I have to say. I think it's a greater good for the society. Why? Because think about the fourth year engineering student uh, who wants to start a company based on his capstone project, but but he's weighing whether he should pay a $5,000 founders package from one of the Bay Street law firms, or spend that $5,000 on getting some computing resources uh, to build his model, right? Uh, so I think it's for greater good first. Second, I think lawyers need to think about, or lawyer needs to stop being comfortable with the fact that most people who require legal services cannot afford legal services. And there are ways for law firms to increase their revenue streams, right? So in the US, in fact, we're seeing quite a bit of law firms are adopting automations in terms of like client intakes, right? Or even in Kitchener Waterloo, one of my mentors, who's a big time tech lawyer here in the region, he adopted his own AI solution to answer client emails when he's not working, right? So we're seeing, uh, you know, open-minded lawyers adopting automations, but again, uh, there's gonna be people that would be think about like the accountants who refuse to use spreadsheets.
Mhm.
Yeah, just it's just an inevitable part of technological revolution. It's going to be extremely difficult for them to justify the value that they're delivering to their clients based on the billable hourly rate that they're charging.
Yeah. I think the value is still there, but how it's
Mhm.
delivered is going to be vastly different from what you're saying. But I think the other thing that needs to happen, and this has to be in lockstep with industry, is the education system that needs to prepare their graduates for what they are to expect in the new legal realm. Like, how do you, as someone who's gone to law school,
Mhm.
and you're based on your experience and based on the current understanding of what to expect in the legal profession, how should the education system change?
Yeah, I actually think there's like huge flaw with the legal education system. Take myself for example. Uh, I actually got decent grades in law school, and I've won national awards on my essays criticizing Supreme Court decisions on healthcare funding. But I actually was one of the students that struggled to find an articling position. And I also know that articling students in Canada, they're extremely underpaid and being taken advantage of. And there's even examples of articling students working for free for law firms just to get that certification at the end that they did their articling, right? So I think the current system as it is extremely unfair, and those lawyers ought to be ashamed of themselves for using free labor from an articling student who wants to become a lawyer and get their law license. And I actually think AI is a way to actually level the playing field. So we talked about how recent college engineering grads can become 10x developers with 10 years of experience in terms of the codes that they can output. I'm also bullish on the fact that the young law students who are able to wield the power of AI and tools to maybe establish their solo practice and provide highly valuable legal services to their clients, whether it be criminal law or employment law, immigration law. Uh, I think it's I'm actually bullish on the point that AI is helping the small guys who don't have the resources, who don't have access to nepotism connections at the law
Mhm,
firms. I think it's making the world more fair rather than unfair.
mhm. I love that. I love that. I love that you're trying to disrupt in that way that democratizes it, but you're also conscious of the fact that the system has to change, but it doesn't necessarily mean that positions will be replaced or displaced. You're basically saying you need to add AI to your toolkit, be forward thinking, and be able to use it in the business that allows you to create more access for clients, improve your I mean, they don't have to improve their bottom line, but they could just change the model so that more clients at a lower rate will still improve revenue outcomes for their companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I work for boutique law firms, and I know it's extremely difficult to operate a profitable solo practice or boutique law practice, right? And I think that if you become more effective, not just more efficient, but more effective with the services that you're delivering to your clients as a law firm or as a lawyer, you can the entire TAM, total addressable market size for legal services industry, can be greatly increased. There will be more people that want to start their companies. There are going to be more people that want to invest in companies, right? Not less. And the only times, if history serves as as an example, the only times where you're seeing massive unemployment rates uh, is because of poor macroeconomic policies, not because of technological advancements, right?
Absolutely.
Think about the massive unemployment rates in the recent, say, 4 decades or 5 decades. It was a result of monetary policies and fiscal policies from the government. But Silicon Valley automating, say, commerce with Shopify and Amazon. Uh, in fact, what we've seen is more people are creating jobs, right? And if you were to time travel back to the 1800s and you talk to the people who were worried about automation taking away job positions, and you try to explain to them, this guy named Jake Paul or Logan Paul, they're YouTube influencers. They will have no idea what profession a YouTube influencer is about.
Exactly.
And I think what AI is going to do for the society is, yes, you're going to see some positions being eliminated for sure. But there's also going to be new positions created that we can't even imagine of
Hmm.
right now.
I agree with that. I still remember when, honestly, the turn of the year 2000, um, when I decided I was going to leave traditional advertising and direct mail and TV and radio and do digital, had no idea what I was doing. Like, we were learning as we went along. We had to learn about DoubleClick back then, which wasn't
Yeah.
even bought by Google.
Yeah.
I mean, there are new professions like UX, UI that were created. Websites were very new. People were making money hand over fist on websites. And so you're right. You're right. We have to be open to the fact that new opportunities are going to be created that we can never imagine. So
Yeah.
so thank you so much. That's all we have time for today. And I know we ran over, but this has
Mhm.
been a truly enlightening conversation. We'll be watching to see how fast professional services progress in this increasingly, I guess, AI landscape. And I look forward to actually seeing how you and your company contribute to this evolving legal profession, Ben. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity to chat.
No, no problem. And for our audience, if you have topics that you want us to explore, please email us at communications@altitudeaccelerator.ca. Tech Uncensored is powered, it's produced by Altitude Accelerator, and we're hosted on Spotify. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Hessie Jones, and I invite you to continue to stay curious and to be inspired.